Tene ta kasen kentu le jerdo ta tanda leusumba tekonani gombe nekarela tekonani te tandam gademba te seni te sung kapso jerdo kapkap la ngoni sam sungiore ta tandu mainta san rabo te kareresena kunto yongdu namba samje ta te la kapka la kunto yongdu sam sungiore la kapka la ngoni sam sungiore kapka la seni namba sam sungiore te ta tandu chipare la ta te tabu ngoni sam te la ta kasinge kapso tanda dembaye tanto number yaba ta tinde sumarela ta teringa kasala rakpa ta tawa kunzo tandam rakpa kunzo go on de sepa ta tawa tandam go on de sepa cheprate sungi yorel tini te nani tangpo rakpa kunzo go on de sete tempe kapso ta kunzo kandire tandam kandire sena ngoni som yore ngoni som yodi tinani rakpa kunzo de kandire tandam de kandire sena takpa tangne hipa tong tegin jepa rakpa yin songne tene ta tegin do tanda takpa sedu kunto tene ta tegin do hipa sedu tene yenwang tene ta ti hipa te tegin jepa rakpa yin songne tene yongrup te yengo te taware te ina yongrup hi kunzo gong de se de jepa kasola tene rakpa kunzo kudempa yin song yin sare.
So to pick up where we left off yesterday, so we were in the third chapter, and the third chapter is teaching suchness, and so suchness means the character of the ultimate, and so this is generally what we're teaching, and sometimes in this chapter we say the three natures, and so this is a name that's given. It's also called the imaginary, dependent, and wholly established. Sometimes it's called the three essences. Sometimes it's called the three natures. Whatever we call it, it's all the same. The meaning of them is the same. So we've got these three different natures, and we just went through the presentation of how these fit with the Four Noble Truths. And so now we've come to the presenting them as the coarse and the subtle. So presenting them as the coarse relative and the subtle ultimate. So how is it? What is the distinction between the two? So first of all, we have the presentation of the coarse, the relative. And so which of the three characteristics are relative truth? What is the relative truth? So we have these three natures which are relative. Well, as it says in the second and third lines of verse 10, it says the imagined mind and expression are coarse. And so here the imagined mind and the expression, the imagined is the imaginary nature. And then mind here means the dependent. And then it says expression. So the expression, this is when we talk about, this is talking about the wholly established. Now, with the nature, the essence of the wholly established is subtle and ultimate. But in relative terms, when we say the words wholly established, then that expression is coarse and relative.
Tene ta teji se tawa tendong ke dempa te sungorela. Tawa tendong ke dempa te kandire se na tampe tenne kipu so. Ta ti ke seni namba som yore, kunta yung rup som yore. Ta ti nani zo kunta tong yung ni te kunzup, rakpa kunzup ke dempa rela. Tene tawa tendong ke dempa te yung rup kipu, ta yung rup kungo te tawa tendong ke dempa re. Ta tawa tendong ke dempa te yung rup te la, te nansi ke seni rabu mandawa tang, te iyawan rabu mandawa kandi yore se na, tene te sungur ke chedo, tene namba nga song yore la, ten tang top tong drupa na, tene ten je ten tang ba, tene topa ten tang ba tang, drupa ten tang ba, se ta ten je onto se na, nelu go onto se pe ten tang, topa ten tang ba se na, tang tartuk kundewa nyangi linde ba tang, drupa ten tang ba tene lam paru tu tsimba drupa te, ten tang ba namba som, ten tang ba te la iye na, number some yore. Yondru tela yena number ni yore. Yondru go lan jurwa hiro yo marella. Tela njurmi tsinje njurwa meba tsinje maloba yondru jaidan. Njurwa meba yondru jaidan. Tene ta te chetawa yinda nganda churba de tsinje maloba yondru ti yondru number ni yore. Ta te trawa tendam je on de zite tembare.
Then next is the teaching on the subtle ultimate, and the text reads here: the ultimate is singular, or you could also translate this perhaps better as saying only one of these, or only one is the ultimate, or the ultimate is only one. And so we have these three characteristics. We have the imagined, the dependent, and the wholly established. And of these three, the imagined, the imaginary, and the dependent are relative, they are coarse, and the subtle, the one that is subtle, the ultimate is only the wholly established. And so when we think about this wholly established, if we think about the sort of internal classifications of it or the characteristics of it, well, what are these classifications and characteristics? Well, there are 5 different classifications and characteristics. And so here these are in verse 11. The object, achievement, and practice are called the 3 types of the ultimate. And so the object, this means the object of the ultimate nature, the meaning of the ultimate nature. And then, so that refers to the actual essence, the actual nature. Then there is the achievement. So this is the ultimate of the achievement. This means attaining the ultimate result of nirvana. And the third is the practice. And so this means the path of practicing the 6 paramitas. This is also the ultimate. So these are the 3 different types of the ultimate. And then in terms of the wholly established, we can talk about it in 2 different ways. There's the unchanging and the unmistaken are the 2 types of wholly established. So if we classify the wholly established, it's the nature of the wholly established never changes really. And so for that reason, it is unchanging. And then when it becomes manifested in its entirety, then it is unmistaken. There is no mistake there, so it is the unmistaken. And so these are the 2 types of the wholly established. So this is looking at it in terms of the subtle ultimate.
Tene ta te jeso tanda ta drakwe tanda sumarela. Chekinji tin trapa te somji ripi trapa osi. Tene ta te la tene chekinji tin trapa te ta kunta te trapa chitanga trapa la jitin la trapa tang ripi trapa namba ni jitin la chitanga yonsu trapa chayta. Tene te la ripi top chi trapa chi ni yorela. Tenen jitin la trakpa sengen ten jitin je khana kare thongge yapa kare tuge yapa ten jitin la trakpa re. Tenen rikpi trakpa sengen te ta khahi rikpi drupni. Tenen jo la ten drevu drupa. Tenen drevu la ten jo drupa. Tenen ngo chuni je ripa. Ta chitang ka ripa namba somsung ge ware la. Jo sawasi pe ripa. Tenen drevu tu pe ripa. Ngo chuni je ripa se na per na me chawa yimbala ta junsen kan duya yore be se na mare te koran chuni ge me chawa re dabo ta te chuni ge ripa number som yore tene che ge jitin takpa te ta che ge jitin la takpa te la che yore ripi takpa te la som yore che ge jitin takpa te som ji ripi takpa som yore la som de kandire se na jo sawasi per ripa Devu tu per ripa, ngo chuni je ripa som je la. Tene ta te la, ti nani, ngo ni som ke noni, jitin trapa te khari yore se na, che ki se na ta te la yang kogi yore la. Kunta chipu ten jitin la trapa re. Tene, yeon ton, tene, yondrup ni de ripi trapa re. Sumari.
가서 네 차오 주기를 받아
주 차와지 베리바
교체 어제부터 데보
데부 두 베리바
두 배로 두 어를
뭐 주인이 데리바
So next is presenting it in terms of the consensus, presenting the three essences in terms of consensus. And this is in verse 12. Common consensus is from one, logical consensus is from three. So in terms of the types of consensus we can have the common worldly sorts of consensus, and then there also is logical consensus. So when we talk about common consensus, that's generally what we know in the world, what we talk about, what we see, what we hear. That's how we generally know things in the world. That's the common consensus. And then there also is the logical consensus of, proving things through logic and coming to consensus that way. And so in terms of the logical consensus, there are actually three different types of logical consensus. There is the proving that the existence of a result or proving the result through the cause, or proving the cause because of the result, or just proving the essence of something. And so in general, these are the causal logic of the function, the resultant logic of dependency, and then the logic of the essence. And so when we talk about the logic of the essence of something, basically the nature of something, fire is hot. And you don't have to prove it in any way. That's just the nature of fire. There's no need to worry about it in other ways. So that's the sort of the logic of the essence. And so these are the three different types of the logical consensus. And then there's one type of the worldly consensus. Now, in terms of these with the and so in this way, the logical consensus comes from these three different types of logic: the causal logic of the function, and the resultant logic of dependency, and then the logic of the essence as well. And so these are the three types of logical consensus. In the common consensus, there is just that one type of the worldly consensus. Now, and how is it that these match up with the three different characteristics? Well, the common consensus is just from one. It is just from the one imaginary nature. Whereas the second and the third, the dependence and the wholly established, are the logical consensus.
Tene ta teji so number tope jeyur du jurma jur te temparella. Tene ta te ngoni somte kunta yung somte number tope hiji jeyur du jurma reves sumka hiji jeyur du jurma reves na te tembe ke cherto jirtan number tope jeyur singitela number ni yore number takpa singitela tene hidip number topa to nyedip number topa ni yore la. Tene namda jeyur namni de chitang nyedip number taba to hidip number taba number ni de ta te ni ji yur du churba te kunta yung du som jenoni kan de number taba yi ji jeyur du churba re se na jikbu konar jeba yin se na yung du jibu number taba nyedip number taba to hidip number taba yi ni ji jeyur de yung du kona yimbar jeba yin la yin sum de tel number topic jeyur de yongdu khona yin ba ten de tel ta ti che ge shula kare ten ge yore se na kun ta ton yin ni bo de number topic hi ji jeyur mai si ten ge.
So next is the presentation of whether they have the pure object or not. And so this is with the three natures, the imaginary, the dependent, and the wholly established, are the spheres, or the objects that they engage, are the objects of pure wisdom or not. So when we talk about the types of the pure spheres, the types of the pure objects that something can evaluate, there are two. There are two pure spheres, and so the two pure spheres are the having purified the cognitive obscurations and having purified the afflictive obscurations. So these are the two: having purified the cognitive obscurations and having purified the purification of the afflictive obscurations. And so these are the two types of pure spheres or objects that we can have. And so whose sphere are they in? What type of wisdom perceives them? Well, they are only in the sphere of one of these, which is the wholly established. So only the wholly established can perceive the purification of the, or the purity of the cognitive obscurations and the purification of the afflictive obscurations. And so that's only one whose sphere they're in, that of the wholly established. And so what this implicitly teaches is that the other two natures, the imaginary and the dependent, are not able to engage the pure spheres.
Tene ta te jiso do rela do undu de la chutamji do undu jetang ngaranzo ta namba sanji pe ten chutamji ganando tempe kapsula chu nga sungyo chu nga te tene jetang main tang jei main te ta susu ge ngupo tamji ge main tini di la tempe main de to gu bi junsen ta main de to pe yul de ta yul de ta tini de la number to pa yul de ta ni de la number to pa ton som de ta tini de yendo yong to pe chu ji yin ta de che ta wa yendo to pe hirap sam yi hi de number nga nya ta chu nga sung ge yo re chu nga te konto yung du song no kantin do ge yo re se na tene junsen ta ta tindana sa ne junsen jodon number to pa to main number ni su du sun de tel junsen ta chei number to pa ta ni main de number som de number ni su do de konto to yung ni ji kong su do re 다 단단 그 잔이 용답에 주지 예인다 대제다와 인도 희비 히랍니 보데 다데 단다 용주 코너래 다데 주지 예인데 용주래라 드니 대제다와 인도 또 비히데 용주리 기분이 기부 코네 두바예 다데 용주 그 공수 두바예 상 다지당 그 다지 용 가슬라 드니 다데 무슨 냠슬 랑자동 또자데 간데레세나 용주리 teni pangja de kandere se na yong konta tong yong namba ni ta ti no ne konta den truba chimbo tong yong de yang pangja yin ba ta rang yin ji char ge yo re la kunzo go on de se na te yo re de yin na tan dam go on de se na te ma du ba yin be che na teni de tanda konta yong du som de konta yong ni de ta te main dong jun sin dong nang do go kong su do yo.
So following this is something that I translated here is how they contain, or how they are all categorized, or how they can all be subsumed together. So generally, when we talk about all phenomena in the Buddhist teachings, we can talk about them, all phenomena being sort of subsumed within 5 different dharmas, or 5 different phenomena. And so these 5 different phenomena are, the first one is name. So name means all the different names that we give to the various things. So that's name. That's the first one. And the second one is reason. Now the reason means the objects, the things, the reasons or the objects. And then the third is our thoughts. And so these are the first 3. And then the fourth one is the complete Dharma expanse, or the complete Dharma expanse. And then there also, the fifth one is the intelligence or the wisdom that realizes that what it is. And so these are the 5 different phenomena. So to go through them again, there's name, reason, name, reason, thought, the complete Dharma expanse, and the wisdom the true wisdom that realizes it. So these are the 5 phenomena. Now, how are these contained within the 3 essences of the imaginary, dependent, and the wholly established? Well, as it says, reason, thought, and name are contained in 2. So we have reason, that is the objects. We have the thought and the name. These are contained within 2 of these. So these 3 are all the dependent and the imaginary. And then there is the true wisdom and supreme suchness are contained within just 1. So the ultimate nature, the Dharma expanse, and the wisdom that realizes it, the wisdom or the intelligence that realizes that, are only wholly established. So the Dharma expanse is, of course, it's the ultimate nature. It is wholly established, as is the wisdom that realizes it. That is also wholly established. And then, so these are the things that we practice on, and the things that realize the nature of it. So these are both wholly established. They're what we need to realize and manifest. And the things that we need to eliminate are the other two, the imaginary and the dependent. The reason is the imaginary is just complete confusion to begin with, and the dependent is something that relatively is present but ultimately cannot be established, does not exist ultimately. And so in this way, we have these the two, the imaginary and the dependent, and among them of the five phenomena, there are three that are contained within them, which are name, reason, and thought.
Tene ta te yendo tanda te konani number 9 singi je yore la ta te la kandi sinju tengi yore se na jup te konani ta jai tene ta tanda chembe seni je te yine jup te yine seni je te yine la so ba dai song yore la ta te no ne danga no ne jup te konani ne number 2 jup te kona number 2 ne patan ngembar hyo seni number ripaton ripatan seni number reiton ta yonda de ba ji bo sunde jup te konani ne te ta tan de jitin korwalan jupata tene nepe te konani de nepe te hini de jitin je kona nepata ngembar shupa wam ta ngembar shupa te ta nepe te hini de dungal je dembata ngembar shupa te hini de kunjung de dembala kogi yore tene
kunjung dembate
ngembar shupa kunjung tenen seni number seni don number riban seni te jupu te hini don seni ji te hini tenen number ripaton top yongda duba number rate don tapa yongda duba te tenen ta tende takpa te ngop demba ta yongda duba te lamje demba rela demba yeda tene te taindo tanda njup te hini dan seni je te hini dan number rip te hini de som te ta te den yi consumato ba je dan ge jup no ba da bo je la ko ge yo la ta te ta bu ge no ni ta kande tene kunta don yemoni re kande yongru re se na ta njup te hini dan ne pe te hini don ngember hip te hini som te tene kunta don yemoni ji consumato ba re seni je te hini don number rip te hini don top te hini don yongda rip te hini yede tene tanda yongru ji consumato ba re so
건강한데 가서 템퍼시 뒤수데
냠버
슈퍼데 가서 근중인데 받아 냠버 슈퍼데 근중인데 받아
냠버 슈퍼데 근중인데 템바 톱 대기니데
도경기 템버데 네비데시니로
동물지 템바데 네비데기니
네비데시니로
냠버 슈퍼데 근중인데 템바
근중인데 받네 가서
톱 대기니데
라 고베 템바
고베 템바 용다 르베 대기니데 람지 템바
람기 템바데 주바다
주바다 제 세니 다니 넘버 리바송데 드네 dengi consumato ba
dengi consumato laso. Then there's a presentation of this according to the classifications of suchness, or the classifications of suchness. There are actually 7 different types of suchness that are taught, and so of these, and these are the suchness of entry, the suchness of characteristics, and so forth. There are these 7 different suchnesses that are presented, and so the text here, actually the translation here is a little bit wrong. The translation should be changed to read, the suchness of entry, phase, and wrong engagement are twofold. Characteristics, awareness, purity, and true practice are one. So the suchness of entry, phase, wrong engagement are twofold. The suchness of characteristics, awareness, purity, and true practices are one. So here we have the suchness of entry. This is basically the suchness of entering the of being in the world and entering the world. And then there's the suchness of phase, or staying. You can also say staying for phase. And so the suchness of staying here, that is basically the truth of suffering. That is staying within samsara. So it is the truth of suffering. Then another of the suchnesses is the suchness of wrong engagement. And so wrong engagement is the truth of origin, our karma and afflictions. And so that is the wrong engagement, the truth of origin. And then there is the suchness of the purity. So the purity is the truth of the cessation of all the afflictions and so forth. So that is the suchness of purity is the truth of cessation. And then the true practice is the truth of the path. And so in this way we have four that include the Four Noble Truths. We have the truth of wrong engagement, the truth of phase or staying, you can translate it also as. That is the truth of suffering. The truth of wrong engagement is the truth of origin. Purity is the truth of cessation, and the true practice is the truth of the path. Then there are three others that are left: the suchness of entry, the suchness of characteristics, and the suchness of awareness. And these three are not contained within any of the four truths. Now, how is it that these are contained within the three essences of the imaginary, dependent, and the wholly established? Well, the suchness of entry for the first, the suchness of phase or staying for the second, and the suchness of wrong engagement are all twofold. They all are both the imaginary and the dependent. And the suchnesses of the other four, the characteristics, awareness, purity, and true practice, are all one. They are all the wholly established.
Tene ta te jisen keprasa necho ten yore la keprasa necho de kandere sena pumbo ton kom ton jinchi la so ba ta ngara to tambe juju on to site tembare ta din keprasa necho de tengu be junsin de kandere sena donzin chembu je dodun zin ba de ta ngara so dodun zin ba de ya chitang ta koa ge teni tenge yore la Tinite Kuagata in the Tendutela, Tambo, Pumbolan Kepa, the Tengu Pijunsin, Dot the Chipu, Yore, somebody, Dope Certo, Tene Pumbonga, Temper. Tene Dot taking Jitin, they do Tonti, Doggy Jabare, somebody Certo, Tene Jore, somebody Certo, Jaitan, Jodon Sawatanse, Tati Joy Certola, Tene Concho Jitin. Tini dādi ngūpo tāngji la lōng jeba pōnda bōjiri, sāwā pōnda bōjiri, sāmbā te dōpo cheto la jenchi jūni, dā mārē jenchi jūni ki tēnen rōgi yuwa rēs. Tini dādi jitin je, dā lā sōpa jitin je sēpa bōji yuwa rēs, sāmbā nyingbo la, tini te mārē tēnri yen la jūni ki tsōjin rōgi yuwa rēs. Tini dādi tāngji la ōng jōrni tāi kāngā zōngkīn dā bōjiri, sāmbā te dopo certo la tene neda nema impa tembare onjuru ke dopo certo tene da de kanga daponda boji reson be certo te dopo ke certo la ombo tembare tene da de tapa rimbar tembe da de tapa imba topo ke nyembo la tene tuje ondo se de tusam jo nom jo da te tembare da de nyemo baton tie baton top ne so tawe ke certo la tawati dopo ke certo la demba yete Tini da tingenzen gambala sopa ke tanto nanjur chinto ga tawe ke cheto te tawe ke khenpa dopa cheto la tikpa te tini da de tangpo madolo wa tini jima tol ndogo yo re samba te dopa ke cheto la duzi ton duma si ta te zo tempa re la tini te tanda kashi ke da jipur tawa to jur tawa to shawa la sopa ndra la na da to ta te ta ke yo re la te dopa ke cheto la keprasav necho te tempa re san ta keprasav necho te wone re re jendal rimba jendal song yo re
Following this is the presentation of the 10 types of knowledge. And so these are the 10 types of knowledge, the 10 things that we need to know. These are knowledge of the aggregates, knowledge of the elements or dhatus, the knowledge of the sense bases or ayatanas, and so forth. And the reason that we need to know this is that we all have a lot of self-clinging. And when we cling to a self, then if we think about how we understand it, sometimes when we cling to a self, the reason we cling to ourselves is like being singular. So singular, and for that reason, the aggregates are taught. So the aggregates are taught because we think of the self as being one singular thing, and then to refute that, we teach the 5 aggregates. Then sometimes we also think of the self as being the cause of the entire world to happen. And so... I know that none of you have that idea, do you? We think of ourselves as being the cause of the entire world. In order to say that there isn't a self that is the cause of the world, we teach the 18 different elements or dhatus in Sanskrit. And then there's the idea that the self is the thing that enjoys or consumes all of the things there are to consume. So that which enjoys or engages all sorts of objects. And in order to refute that, we have the teachings on the 12 sense bases or ayatanas. Then we have the idea that there is a self that is the creator of the world. And so in order to refute that idea, there is the teaching on the 12 links of interdependence. And then there's the idea of the the idea of the self as being the ruler or the lord who rules over everything. And so in order to refute that idea, there is the teaching of the possible and the impossible. And then there's the idea that there's a self that is sort of the master over everything. It's in control and is the master. And in order to refute, there's the teaching of the faculties. Then there's the idea of the self as being permanent. And so in order to refute the idea of permanence, we have the teaching on time, the 3 times of past, present, and future. We also have the idea of the self as being the basis for all the afflictions to happen and the basis for purification and purity. And so in order to refute that, we have the teaching of the 4 noble truths. Then we think of the self as being it's the self that does meditation. It's the self that has all the yogic practices. So the self is the yogi. But in order to refute that, we have the teachings of the vehicles. And then we also have the idea of the self as being either liberated or unliberated. So liberated and liberated are counted together as one. And in order to refute that, we have the teaching of the compound and the non-compound. And so the main thing is that we have these ideas of the self as being a singular, as being the cause of the consumer, and so forth, in order to refute that. So there are these views of the self. And so in order to refute them, there are these 10 areas that we need to know, and which are each taught in order.
Tene ta te ta bun ke prasa ne jote kunto yung ru sum ji kongso kan de do ge yore se na kunto tan dong nang do tan chuni tan ji de da der se ta de kunto ge nang ba jin ji yin na kunto ge kongso do ge nam do ge tan yin na yin ge kongso do ge chuni ge tan yin na ta de yung ru ji kongso do ge de dong de la do ge so ne tan dor du ba zong song re la 다 대지서 다 단다 케프라서 내줘데 림바임들라 땡나와래라 되는 케프라서 내줘 있는데 당보 풍보랑 케파래 풍보랑 케파데 다 풍보가 땡기요래라 풍보가 땡기비기 준생 간데레세나 되는 아란소 도도 제인 선베게 현바요래라 대도베게 서도 되는 토마니 토마메바니 타마메베바들 뒤진 저와 림바 yen돌라드니 데 로다 다와 효동 사마다 딘데 진저와 예바데 제이다 데니 토마니다 제타티 풍봉아 지당 그족지 풍보세나 족 라만다 요아레 족 요아레 족데 강가 토마레 데니 라 만다 쳔보 중르 콩바 쳔 루보라 있나요 고 라바 콩바 tene lakpa tawa jela ina yung sormo tene tanda sormo nanga kya tsei kya nanga rupa la soba toma pumbu ngubo je inda mato dembar trupe dodo je yo mare mambo je toma ta toma tenzu tsu du ne teni ya batela yonsu tse na teni pumbu ngai rangin tu churbate togi yo re la ta tige rubo kipurin zimba ke dopu ke chetula dembare.
So we have these 10 areas that we need to know. And how is it that they are contained within our three natures of the imaginary, dependent, and the wholly established? Well, as it says in the second half of verse 16, through misconceiving the meaning of thought and the meaning of Dharma nature, they are in those. And so the misconceptions, those are all the imaginary. And then the meaning of thought, that is the dependent, and then the meaning of the Dharma nature, that is the wholly established. So that is how they are contained within the three natures. And then following that comes in order the teachings of each of the 10 areas. And so the first of the 10 areas is knowledge of the aggregates. And so this is first the sense of many, combined, and differentiated. So first means generally, we think of ourselves as being some single thing, some single blob that's me. So there's that, and we're really attached to that. And in order to reverse that attachment, then there's the idea of first. So from beginningless time to the endless time, we've had this complete constant change of things going one after the other. So from beginningless time, from year after year to month, it's always changing the self. So it's changing over time. And then it's also the sense of many. There are many different things. And so if we think about many different forms, like our body is many different things all put together. We've had many different forms. We've been small, we've been little, and so forth. And even within the form that we have at any given moment, there are different parts that are all put together, that are all combined together, such as our heads, our hands, and even within our hands we have fingers, and then with fingers you have the skin on the outside, the bones on the inside, the flesh and blood in between. And so if you look at it, actually there is no single thing that is, no single solid thing that is the self anywhere. So it's just many things that are really combined together. And then if we examine it carefully, we can see that they can all be differentiated, and we can realize that everything is the nature of these 5 different aggregates. And so the reason that this is taught in order that we can refute or reverse the conception of the self being a single solid whole.
Tene ta tejendo tene ta tangbote ta ji purunse ba do bu ke chetla pungbote ta tejendo tene do de jo ba to bu ke to ba ta tan ji tin je kon la jo yin ye ba la yi se ba la so ba mai ba ta ngara zo na ba sang ji be ta wa tem be ke chetla tene ji tin je kon de kan ji ni shon wa re se na kon jo ji la tin ni shon wa re Conjoji de Candijane Chumari Sena, Tene Tate Nzimba, Nzindong, Zondong, Tenzimba, 17 Yin de Zendang singing de Omboto, Tachidang, Mait Nawana, Lu Ye de Omboto Yorella. Zondang singing de Yurju on the City, Tene Zuk Data Roriza Chu de number 2 yor. Ten number hiba, the make number hiba ne, the each number hiba part of 2 URL. That data we can't joji or that termba in the can't joji de Yurdan, Nang, Wambodan, Hiba Tenzola Tene, Jitin no on the Shungi URL. 70 Hindun de that day, the common keeping on gay, Tene, Tan Jitin Jacom, the Juyenda Gicheba, Tene Haranzo Ranang. Rananga ongi chuain bala kyaji yore.
So that first area of knowledge is taught in order to refute any ideas of clinging to the self as being singular. And then next is the teaching of the knowledge of the elements, which is taught in order to refute any ideas of there being a self that is a cause, or of there someone else being a cause, a God that is the creator of the world, or something like that. Generally, when we talk about this in the Buddhist teachings, well, what is it that the world arises out of? How is it that the world arises? Well, the world arises out of the 18 elements, or the 18 dhatus. And so, how is it that they arise? Well, as it says here, the seeds of perceiver, perceived, and perception are held to be another. And so, the perceived, this means these 6 faculties are eyes, ears, nose, tongues, bodies, and minds. And then mind faculties. And then the perceived is the objects that these perceive, the forms, sounds, scents, tastes, sensations, and phenomena or dharmas. And then perception means the consciousnesses that perceive these, from the eye consciousness up to the mind consciousness. And so these are held to be another of the areas. And so in this way, there are the 18 different elements, and they include all of our external objects, the faculties, and also the internal perceiving mind. And so it is out of these that our entire world is taught. And so this is taught as being the knowledge of the elements. And it's taught in order to refute the idea of there being a single cause, the self that is the cause of the world. And instead, it's teaching us that all of the world that we see is actually just our own perception, or arises out of our own perception, I should say.
Tenchi Juni, Tengi Yorella, Tenchi Juni, the Tempe capsula, Tatanda Kondo, Duden Tempe capsula, Shaloka Jongape, 6 Chipa Jongape Nondo, Sawa Sina, Caridis in a long jeba potable, Kogi Yorella. Then a long jeba pote, Dai, Sambangaransu Yore. Naranzo da mare, tenete number not super mambo, Dupati Latini, Tenchi Juni Latini, Yungi Yore. Chorwata, Tanam, Chorwa, Mandawa, and Candice Yungi Yoresin, Tenchi Juni Latini Yungi Yore. Then the Urgin Jurva Yonsu Jepatim, Candice Yungi Yoresin, Tenchi Juni Latin, Nior Long Jepa, Chorton, Tano, Yonche, Nietzsche Jungo Yin, no Tenchi Juni, Mato, Teningupo, Dudu, Dala Soba Yan Kaya, Your Mare, Sitati, Tenchi and Kepatemare. La tenete yendo yibate tendilan keparela tendilan kepate ta tandangaranso dio maimpa la jurtawa ton devo maimpa la devertawa zolwa di ta zolwa segi yorela ti nyembo la karetenge yoresina dondo mejin kunde me patini nguni me maimpa ji la drota pa maimpa yimba ji la kurwata pa maimpa nguni tendil ke onki jungi yorela Tendil te tanda dep sumba ke nangwa tene leu tangbu ke nangwa tene hyaloka chichipa nangwa tendil na chuni te si jeba anda bosong yuare la ta te tikapsa la tempare ta chitang tendil na chuni tempate tikpa anda bo tendil keba.
And following that is the teaching of the knowledge of the sense spaces or the ayatana. And so here, what this is taught for is what is mentioned in the summary verse, or the verse of the overview at the beginning, the idea of there being a consumer. Or actually, if I were more literal about this, an eater, someone who's eating in that, something who's enjoying all the external objects. So this means the idea that there is a self who is actually using and enjoying all these external objects. But actually to teach that this is not the result of a self, but rather the engagement with the object that comes from the sensations, the various feelings that we have, and the object, and these two coming together and being engaged are actually, this comes about not through various different things coming together. So these are the 12 sense bases. And so this is in terms of understanding how our own 6 internal faculties and the 6 different external objects that we have come together. And so then following this, and so these are taught in the verse that reads, "The gate for arising of the engagement that recognizes sensation of object and another, and sensation and object are another. This is the area of knowledge of the sense basis." Then the fourth area of knowledge is the knowledge of interdependence. And so generally, when we think about how the world and everything happens, often we think of something that is not actually a cause as being a cause. Or we think that something has a result, that actually has a result, we think of it as not having a result, or so forth. And so the antidote for that sort of an exaggeration or denigration of cause, result, and function is the meditation on the 12 links of interdependence. And so this is the antidote for the exaggeration that thinks that something that isn't a cause actually is, or the denigration that thinks that something that actually is a result is not a result. And these 12 links of interdependence are taught in Chapter 1, in verse 11 of Chapter 1. So the same 12 links of interdependence. And they're taught there, so it's not necessary to explain them again. But that is the knowledge of interdependence.
다 케프사베 닝아바티 네단 네마인바 숭기요라라 네단 네마인바 생긴데 다 로롱진라고지 마인바 다 코란 네단 다 코란 제니라보다 템다보데 쿠르구기요라라 다 대야 갑들 영원 넘바 다인성요라라 문제바 영원 당보 영원 당보데 문제바 영원 되는 나랑 디바 먹게 와서나 탈티 레전드부터 되는 동날다 맹국이요 문제긴도 맹국이요 제다 되는 이바데 내바 영원 되는 나랑 게외 잡아서나 네 가나용다 마가나용다 되는 나랑 대지 동tem바제 토리기네스 제고바제 임베잖아 내바 영원 넘버 타파 영원테 당가랑 람라 째나 되네 랑힌지 나랑 넘버 타파는 로아다 냠든 중앙 영원 생긴데 냠든 중당 왕지당 냠든 중앙 영원데 간디지레세나 되네 산지 닌다보다 콜루주 잡부 닌다보 정투기요 말레스 되네 왕세바 영원데 냠든 정투기요 말레스 나 요다 말
Now, the fifth area that we need to, the fifth area of knowledge is the knowledge of the possible and impossible. And this is taught in order to refute the idea that there is a self that is in control of things, an independent self that's in control. And so, actually, we have to realize that things happen because of their characteristics. They happen because of sort of rules of how, or laws of how they actually go. So that teaching that everything happens in dependence upon something. And so here there are 7 areas of dependence. And the first area of dependence is called the unwanted. And so this is the dependence of the unwanted. This means that when we do misdeeds and unvirtuous acts, then we will experience a result that we don't like and that we don't want. So that's the dependence of the unwanted. And then there is the wanted, which means that when we do a virtuous act, whether you want it or not, you're going to be reborn in a high realm, in a virtuous, in a good place, whether you like it or not. That's the wanted. Dependence. And then the third is the pure. The pure means that when we make efforts and are diligent about the path, we naturally attain a state of purity. The fourth of these is co-occurrence. And so co-occurrence actually means, what this is saying is that there are certain things that just can't happen at the same time. It's not possible for there to be 2 Buddhas at the same time, or it's not possible for there to be 2 universal emperors at the same time.
Tene ta tejiso yewang ngabate wangsepa yewang tang Drupati topa yewang sungkiwarela ngaba wangsepa yewang de tondola sopa luten la tenen kuluju jarbola sopa sip matopa rabo ta topa yewonte tundula sopa lutin la sanji ran sanji je kompon top ma topa tabuton tene damba de yewon damba de kundu jeba yewon sungi yawar kundu jeba yewonte tam pop sa totni tene megewala megewe jeba ndabo nangi yo mari ran hinge tene ta yang ta palan drogi yaware te tabu yin yewon ni jetanti yin ta te la ne ma yin palan kepa ta te koran ran hinge sujung zuba mari de yin na te ran hinge tende je ne tsulundabo yaware so yin sare.
So the fifth of the dependencies, the fifth is wielding power, the sixth is achieving. And so the fifth one, wielding power, this means that it's impossible on the support of a body such as an animal to become a universal emperor, for example. And when we talk about the dependence of achieving, this means that, again, on the support of a body of an animal, for example, it's impossible to attain the state of a self-Buddha, of a Pratyeka Buddha. So that is the sixth. Then the seventh of these is behavior. And what this means is that with your behavior, when you attain a noble state, then naturally you refrain from bad behavior. So this is naturally, you're naturally pure. And so these are dependent only, they happen in dependence upon other things, and they're another area of knowledge, the knowledge of the possible and the impossible. And so these are saying that whatever you like or whatever you want in other ways, this is the way naturally things happen. This is the way they are.
Tene ta teji so tanda wangbo lang kepa, tupa te wangbo lang kepa re la. Wangbo singke te ta tangchi je dakpon dabo je yuwa ribisi na dakpon dabo yuwa mare. Ngaran so ge lu la yepe ge wangbo tenzo la tenne yungi yuwa re la. Wangbo te ke kandi si tenge yuwa re se na nzenda ne dan jen menchi je tong takpa nyi ji tser se. Tene wangbo druk, wangbo nga. Mek nawa na chi lu de ombo nga ti yul ngan zingi yore ta ti tendo tenen do ino ne sumbo ombo ga onde se na so go ombo sumki yore la so go ombo te nepa tenen so de manga ga pato nepe ge nepa la onse ge yore tenen jai minchi pa te ta ombo tenzo ye na tenen rimba yendo la rong lu den so ne jai minchi pa ta teni ta te yendo ti tendo choru ombo song yoarela choru ombo te chorwa dewa dunghal tongyam ti namba som dewa la yina lu dewa tong yi dewa ni dunghal la yina teni lu dunghal wa tong sam dunghal wa yi dunghal yi me dewa ti namba ni ti chorwa nga song choru ombo nga song yoarela ta ti rang te chorwa de du kan yina rang longche gu yoarela ta ti te tabula longche pe ko on de se pa ta teni takpa ni te se takpa te la sachi che taba sachi che ge wa tong sami che ge wa ni song yoarela sachi che ge on de se na teni te khasin ombo nga tar do te pa zendu tempa tingen zen hirap te tigri ya nomzong la on se pa ta teni ta sami je on de se na ta tikpa tin zorem ji salam de ni teni tonglam gonglam mlbelang la juba in becherna sami je tapa te tapa ni te ta te susola on jirwanda bo se ge yore ma to do ta bo tong teni la ta bo on jirkin yo mare so in sere.
Now, the next teaching is the knowledge of the faculties. And the word for faculties, actually, as a translator's note, the word for faculties in Tibetan and in Sanskrit means someone who has power over something, someone who's controlling, taking power over something. And so when we think about these faculties, does that therefore mean that we have a self that is taking control of these things? It doesn't mean that. Basically, all of the functions of our body come about because of the faculties that are present within our body. So here it says, for perception, dwelling, continuing experience in the two purities. So here, when we talk about faculties, what do we mean by that? Well, we have the five sensory faculties that are in our body. There's the faculty of our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and these are the five that that we use are the faculties for perceiving external objects. So they're the five sensory faculties. And then also in the sutras, there are talks of other types of faculties. There's the talk of the faculty of life force, which takes control over dwelling or remaining in this body. So it's that it has control or takes control of us remaining in this body until such time as our life is over. Then there also are the faculties for continuing, the two faculties for continuing, for remaining present, and the male and female faculties. And then there are also the faculties of the feelings, which are here listed as experience. So in feelings, in general, we have three different types of feelings. We have the pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. And with pleasant feeling, we have pleasant for body and pleasant for mind. And we have for unpleasant feelings, there's also the pleasant mental feeling, or pleasant physical feelings, and then unhappiness in our mind. And so in this way, we have these 5 different feelings. We have pleasant, unpleasant, mental pleasure, unhappiness, and the neutral feeling. And then the 2 purities these refer to the defiled purity and the undefiled purity. So the defiled purity, these mean the 5 faculties that we talked about the other day, the faculties of faith, diligence, mindfulness, samadhi, and intelligence, these 5 faculties. And so these help us take control over the utterly pure objects. And then there are also the undefiled pure faculties, and these are the faculties that allow us to take control over the paths and the levels, the path of accumulation, the path of seeing, and the path of meditation. And so each of these faculties sort of has its own sphere of influence. There isn't actually any true self or God that takes control over them.
Tene ta te jeso tanda keprasa ne dambate tulan keparela. Tulan kepate tengu pe junsin kandere sena matapa. Njurwa ji ngaranzo tanzin dopa. Ngaranzo tapa yin njurwa yo mare samge yo are. Tan njurwa ta chepa tembe cheto tulan kepa tembarela. Tene tulan kepa tembe ge cherto ndrebu jono chi sento tekin ma chi yin yeno. Tenen drebu tun jodan drebu ni yorala. Joyan rosenba, drebu yon rosenba, jodan drebu jodna ji senba tin depare la. Te yendo drebu yon mayon, joyan mayon ba, drebu yon mayon wade mayon ba ta. Tene yin yeno sunde tela tata wade, tene joden rosen lan, drebu ten ro mazin ba ta buchi yena. Tene tata wade, ta tujinjur wade, tombo depanro. Depa takahim de tini tatawa tini mahopala rimjinroge yorela tini titu chinjurwa imbeche namatapa gombe gechetola tulankepa sungi yore.
The 7th area of knowledge is knowledge of time. And the reason this is taught is that we are naturally impermanent and transient and changing. So this is taught so that we can reverse any ideas of clinging to ourselves as being permanent. We sometimes think, I'm permanent, I'm always going to be here, I'm never going to change. And this is to teach that we are changeable and that we're transient. So for that reason, we teach the knowledge of time. So to teach that, the text reads, cause and result that have been experienced and likewise not experienced are another. In this way, when we have causes and results, and when both the cause and the result have already been experienced, then that phenomena is past. When the cause and the result have not yet been experienced, then that phenomenon is future. And when we are currently experiencing both the cause and the result, then that phenomena is a present phenomena. And so these are the three different times of past, future, and present. And so the reason that this is taught is so that we can meditate upon impermanence. And so that is why we need to learn or have the knowledge of time.
Tene ta te la ngaranso ge sona do te tombo mada pa imba. Tene rimbi takwa la jurndro ge yore song ge yore te mare demba ye netang la tene korwa junre ni nyangenen deba junre ni ge chordo rogo yorela tene te yon chorwa jodon chepe tan te jona druba yen sundu tela chorwa tangarang la neka devi chorwa chona yonda dungalji chorwa chona yonda tene te ge tati leala tene njoma jodan chepe tan te dungalji dembare tati chorwa ti ndebu tinjungi yore te jo na drupa yin sunde ta te ke dungalji demba tinjungi jo te jo drupa te kandere se na kunjungi demba sengi te tangpo ta ngaran tsuku dedu te kana teni jungi yore se na lela teni jungi yore la lela teni jungi se na lechi kunjung se ke yore lechi kunjung te kandere se ni jungi yore se na nye momba kunjung nye momba la teni jungi yore la te nye momba kunjung le dong nye momba kunjung te ta ngaran tsu jiting korwa de druki yore la ta ti jewa chima rimji drupa yin becherna teni kunjung dungalji demba tong kunjung demba ni ta ti dungal ti hiwa gugi yore kare gugi re sena dungal ti hiwa ta ti la dungal ti hiwa ti tarba topa re la tarba topa ti ne ti kandi re sena ngop demba hiwa ta ti demba ye no ni sumba ngop demba re ngop demba ti topa ki tanda kandi gugi yore sena hiwa ti lamji demba re hiwa tangne nyimbu tan se ta ti tanda kunjung dembe nyimbu rabo te la lam gambe ke lam nga ta kasi shuba yindo lam nga la tsembra seba te tene nyimbu tan don dembe cherna yin dunde ta ti yin kanri rese na dembalan kepe kapchire la te jo na drupa yin kunjung wa demba te ta te jo na drupa yin sinkin te ta te yore tanda te sindalan druchen rabo men roi songso tene te jo na drupa yin kunjung wa demba te.
The eighth area of knowledge is knowledge of the truths. And so the truths we're talking about are the Four Noble Truths. And so generally what we think is that we've got some sort of a self that is impure now and that somehow later is going to become purified. But to set us straight on that, there's the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. We've got the cause and result of both samsara and nirvana. And so in this way, there are two each for samsara and nirvana. The cause and results for both of samsara and nirvana. So it reads here, from having sensation and its cause being established. And so we have sensations, we experience sensations. Temporarily we can experience pleasure or pain. And what do these come from? These come out of the cause of karma. So the sensation with their cause, that is the result, or that is the truth of suffering. But what is the cause of this truth of suffering? Well, the cause of the truth of suffering is its cause being established. The cause is the truth of origin. And so first we experience whether pain or pleasure. And so what does that come about because of? It becomes about because of our karma, our good or bad karma. And so that is the truth of origin of karma, or the karmic origin. And then what is it that our karma comes out of? That comes out of the afflictions. And so this is the afflictive origin. So there are these two aspects to the truth of origin. And through these, it sort of establishes and creates all of the experiences of some samsara, such as the lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So in this way, we have these two truths, the suffering and the truth of origin, so the result and the cause. And we need to pacify that suffering. So and the pacification of that is liberation. And that liberation is the cessation, the truth of cessation, which is the third of the four truths. And the way we attain that cessation is through the path, which is the antidotes. And so here it says the pacification and the antidote. These are the five paths. It's making efforts at the five paths as we discussed yesterday. This is referred to here as the antidote, and this is asserted to be another. This is asserted to be the knowledge of the truth. And here there are two more lines. Its cause is established, the truth of origin, which appear in it. But it seems to me that these two lines might be some sort of a mistake in the text.
Tene ta te jeso goba tikpalan keparela Tikpalan kepa te yembi junsin te kandiri se na chitang tikpa sum tikpa nyi rabo yore la teni te chitawa yindu hi ne ta ngaranzo tarba tong tamchin jembe kompong topo ke lam yang takpa lan juba tikpa chenpo lan juba ke chirto tikpalan kepa tenpare ta te tikpa nyi ta chitang kap ka la sum song yore ta kap ndar zayo chising ka ondo se na tikpa nyi rabo song yore la yen ten jan tong tang korwa la tanda nyangin deba la yen ten tong korwa la jan tawa teni tikpa memba nyen tu ji lam ta ngarang korwa le tande ke lo che par chen ji jewa te nyen tu ji komong tong denpa teni te number matu pe ta te tabu number matu pe hibi teni chuni ke nelu te tongpa nye je nelu te jitawa yin de hi ne yin le dagi ne ngi par njung sir korwa le ngi par njung chir na ta tanda yen ten tang jan korwa la jan tong nyangin deba la yen ten ta ne dag ngi par njung wa tang teni number matu pe hibi go ne rangin sen chen tong ji ngi par njung chirna teni yin hiba te ta tipa ji tanda tipa lang kepa guba te yin sumin sar.
The ninth area of knowledge is knowledge of the vehicles. And the reason this is taught is that whether we think of it as being 3 vehicles or 2 vehicles, if we know them properly as they are, then we can progress properly down the paths to the liberation and omniscience. And so here, this is the Mahayana and the foundation vehicle. So sometimes we talk about there being 3 vehicles, sometimes we talk about there being 2 vehicles. Here it is presented in terms of 2 vehicles. And so the vehicle of the foundation vehicle or the Hinayana and the great vehicle or the Mahayana. And so here it says, through knowing the qualities, faults, and non-conception, since one is emancipated by another or oneself, it is called another. So through knowing qualities and faults, so this is thinking of, when we think of the nirvana as being a quality, and when we think of samsara as being a fault, then that is the view of the foundation vehicle of the listeners, the Shravakas. And this is the wish to free ourselves from samsara, and that is the motivation of the foundation vehicle. And then through knowing non-conception, and so this is non-conception here means having a realizing the Dharma nature and emptiness as it is, then that is the motivation of the great vehicle. And so here, knowing the qualities and faults, this means knowing the qualities of samsara and the faults of the qualities of nirvana and the faults of samsara. We have the wish to emancipate. Through knowing that, we can emancipate ourselves from samsara. That is the path of the foundation vehicle. And if we have through non-conceptuality, we can have the attitude of wanting to bring spontaneous benefit to ourselves and others. Then that is the Mahayana motivation. And so this is called another area of knowledge. This is the area of knowledge of the vehicles, the 9th area.
Tene ta tejendo kezi kepracha ne jobate ta duji tong dumasel keparela duji tong dumasel duji se na ngubu nambate ta dumasi se na toni ge nambate la ko ge yorela tene tige ta te ngaranzo tol ta tanda madolwa tong tolwe ge ne kande imbate tembe ge cherto duji tong dumasi jing la kepate tembare tene te tachi juchi junsen tong rab de hewa tenchi na tamani de heba yin sundu te la tachi se na kuntak ngoni da tene jurchi se na yen ngoni da junsen tang se na ta te ta ge junsen tang je ba te duji jin na ba yin ba ta tene rab de hewa yongru jin na ba te tan tan je ba na ta te nduma se jin na ba te tamani de heba yin ta te duji tong duma se lan ke ba te tamani de heba yin tenchu udon ta number je ba le te khona ni je leur je ba te sumba o ta te khona ni je ne lu te ta khasin leu tambu ga na khonde ge cheni te leu ni ba ga na la driba te ta ti driba bhar du je tarba dong tamchin chen ba la bhar du je driba de yo are ta ti driba te pambe ge thap te chena te khande go gre sen te khona ni je ne lu te khona ni je ne lu te khande ten yo are sen kunta yong ru som te ni kunta ga ngo hi ba yin ba ta yong ga ngo pangja yin ba ta 용루고 톱자임바데 다텔라 림바 옌돌라 드니 데즈게 네당다보다 드니 덴케지 네조이 콘수토바 임발라소바 데니 데코나니지 레우데바레
The 10th area of knowledge is knowledge of the compound and non-compound. And so here in the compound, that basically means things. And the non-compound means the empty aspect. And so here this is the point that we're addressing is the point of there being a self that is either unliberated or liberated. And so that's why there's the teaching of the compound and the non-compound. And so here it reads, the designated with its cause and complete pacification with its object are explained to be the last. And so the designated, that means the nature of the imaginary. And then its cause, that means dependent. And so these, for that reason, these are the compound or things. And then the complete pacification, that is the non-compound. And so that is the explained to be the last. That is the one which is the wholly established nature. And so in this way, this is knowledge of the compound and non-compound. And so this is the third chapter, the chapter on suchness, from the treatise differentiating the middle and extremes. So we had the first chapter, which teaches the characteristics of samsara and nirvana. Then we had the second chapter on the obscurations, which is teaching, this is this and this and that and this and the other thing. These are all the obscurations that prevent us from attaining liberation and omniscience. And then there is the treatise, the chapter on suchness. And how is it that we can eliminate these obscurations? Well, it's by knowing the nature of suchness. And in order to know that, we have the teachings on the three natures, the imaginary, dependent, and wholly established. We need to know the imaginary, eliminate the dependent, and attain the wholly established. And so this is taught through these 10 areas of knowledge and so forth. And so that completes the chapter on suchness.
Tene ta te jeso leu sumbate leu yiba te ta tanda nyembo gambe leu tembarela nyembo gambe leu tengu bi junsin te kande de sena te kona ni de hiba tom jin de be sena de yo mare te nyom slen ku yo are te nyom slen ne kande si nyom slen ku yo are sena shonju su ju chusun ji ta ding go ne nyom slen ku yo are la shonju su ju chusun ji ta den te chita duba che ta kan do tanda dema gubna tene dripeleu leuni ba dripeleu na ne sai su che ba chu chi ba de la yela menke lelo ta ni ji ting zin nyang ba tong mi ji ba tong nyang chung tong da tong ning ning ling jian cha si ta ti ka sa la song chu 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 sun ji za ding de gong be chul du ba ji ta de la dzi driba kan de ba de tem ba de la ta tan dang ni nyam sul ne dzi driba de pang ni nyam sul len be ge chul de ta ka ndar je ba nda bo ji sung ha de la de ni ti chen na te ni gong ba chi ba nda bo ta chai de drip ge cha ni ke ba tan ka ndar de ni ngu su nyem bo nyam sul ne gong be ni nda bo de tem ba de.
Following this comes the fourth chapter, meditating on the antidotes. And in this chapter, what is taught is, we're meditating on the antidotes. So just knowing suchness, is that enough? It isn't enough. We also actually have to practice it. We have to meditate upon it. But how is it that we practice suchness? Well, we do it through the 37 factors of enlightenment. And so before we had a brief teaching on the 37 factors of enlightenment. It was in the verse 11 of the second chapter. In verse 11 of the second chapter, it says, not knowing the bases, laziness, the two that weaken samadhi, not developing weakness, views, and the faults of negative tendencies. This is a very brief teaching, a sort of overview of the 37 factors. And the way it was an overview is through teaching primarily the obscurations that hide these factors, or that obscure these factors. Now, here, we're in the fourth chapter, we're talking about how it is that after we have eliminated the obscurations, how is it that we actually practice? And so these two things actually have the same meaning. So one teaching about it from the aspect of the obscurations that obscure, and the other obscuration from how we actually need to practice it in our meditation.
Tene tate yang kamder sonju soju chusun ji ta tin song yo re la tate ngaran chu nyamling si pe kap sala pe kal chembo re la tene tate yang tangbo de la kasin hyuba yin de la long nga ta ji dang long korem ta tu si de long nga yin yo long nga yin na ne tangbo ta le tangbo pa ngaran chu kanderin ju ge se na chu ji long ju ge yo chu long ju ge yo Solon la ye na number some you are. Solon chunu tambo chun tene solon rain tene solon chembo de number some roge you are la. Tene number some den do tambo solon chungu ge kapsula temba nyewari ga ba ye gong gu yo. Ta temba nyewari ga ba ye gong be cherto ningin len cher seju cher ye cher don mamon cher demba yelan jupar demba yelan jusawe temba nyewari ga ba gam se 다 당보 간디 강기 요르세나 데네 루템바니 워리가바 강기 요르라 데닝인리 당가란소 루기탄들라 칼레자 루기탄들라 미게와서 루기탄데 녜몬바체 다 텐데 중기 요르라 디게 쳇나 루템바니 워리가바 감 루디 다 차긴지 요르라보게 히라 마임바 루디 모랑긴지 똥바임바 다 당가란소 카신 휴바긴들이 내가 냠링가 온드세나 단주리니 브라카와던 제와 마타바던 레전데도 코르니미 강기 요르 디 tembañi warga pa ye sabna botela teni nengi lenji charna lu tembañi warga pa ta teni sepa mombo chewe ki charna chorwa tembañi warga pa chorwa tenzola chogin ki na sepa chimbo chege yo arela ti sepa me chewe chetola so chorwa tembañi warga pa ta teni lu ta teta bu ge nyemo ba ton sepa la sopa njung ki yenda bo che yimbe charna sem tembañi warga pa na gambata tini chutangji la mamu becher dola chutemba nyewari gaba gambecher ta teya temba nyewari gaba yete kandi se ganga yewari jina demba yelan jupate tini te dungal je demba ton kunjung demba ton go demba ton lam je demba yelan juparcha temba nyewari gaba gam seta le tangbo pe tindi se gam ne ta ngaran so ge che chula gawa to to achi be ge che tanjuri nye par gawa gambata tene ta te nyordo njukto baton zendu sukulu ke cheto mutapa gambata tene te yendo lende ke nangga hipi cheto legende gambata tene khorwa le thande nginjung lo chepar chinche ke cheto khorwa nyimi gambate ta te ta ngaranchu nyamsu langne gangge yorel ta te chonam chungu ka ji nyamsu lansare.
Now, it's very important for us to practice these 37 factors of mindfulness. And as I said yesterday, the practice of them goes over the course of the five paths in order. And so among these, when we're beginners, well, where is it that we actually start? Well, we start with the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation, as I said yesterday, has three different parts. There is the lesser part of the lesser path of accumulation, which is the first, the lower, the lesser part of it, the lesser path. Then there is the medium path of accumulation, and there is the greater path of accumulation. So there are these three parts of the path of accumulation. And so first, in the lesser path of accumulation, what we meditate upon are the four foundations of mindfulness. And so this is in the first verse of chapter 4, which reads, "Because of negative tendencies, the cause craving, basis, and being undiluted, to enter the four truths, meditate on the foundations of mindfulness." And so here we first meditate upon the mindfulness of the body. And so generally it's because of our body, or for the purposes of our body, that we go through all sorts of effort. We do all sorts of negative things. We have all sorts of afflictions, primarily for our body. And so in order to realize that we shouldn't have that strong clinging to our body. We meditate upon the essence of the body as being empty. Now, in the short term, in terms of our practice, actually, what we currently do is instead of this, we meditate upon the precious human birth and so forth. This is sort of as a replacement for the four foundations of mindfulness. But generally, when we meditate upon the four foundations of mindfulness, first there's mindfulness of the body. And then also there's the cause craving, which actually in your translation should probably be the cause of craving. So there's craving that we have, and the cause of that craving is sensations or feelings. And so in order to understand what it is, those feelings, so that we don't get craving out of them, we meditate upon the mindfulness of feelings. And then following that, we experience the craving and all sorts of other afflictions. The basis for our experience of this is our mind. So we meditate upon the mindfulness of mind. And then so that we will be undiluted about the nature of all phenomena, we meditate upon the mindfulness of dharmas, or the mindfulness of phenomena. And so in this way we have the meditations on the four foundations of mindfulness. And so why is it that we actually meditate upon these? We meditate upon them in order to enter the four truths. So to enter the four truths, meditate on the foundations of mindfulness. And so this is something that beginners can do in order to engage or enter the four truths. You meditate upon the four foundations of mindfulness. Now, what we normally do nowadays is we, first of all, in order to develop excitement and joy about our Dharma practice, we meditate upon the precious human birth. And then to realize that our body is not going to be around forever and that it is impermanent, we meditate upon impermanence. Then, in order that we understand karma, cause, and effect, we meditate upon karma. And then finally, so that we develop a real sense of renunciation from samsara, we meditate upon the defects of samsara. And so this sort of practice is what is contained in the lesser path of accumulations.
Tene ta te ji so chunam drink capsula yong top pon ye gong ge yore. Yong top pon ye sena zendul go ge yore. Menten chu dong yimbo no namba tamji yong hi ni. De da pon zir zendu ne namba ye da rab den jong si zendu namba yen jong ge yore. Zendu namba ye de kan den jong ge yore sena menten chu sena migewa. 미게웨 추제 나랑게 제게 요나 대빵 되네 제게 메나테 다사르도 미지 미게웨 추 마지바 미지 지바 빵 되네 만텐소 동생 님보 남세 님보 게웨기 추래라 게웨 추지 나랑게 두게 메나 드롭 Dugi yabate kone konde pel, gewe chu machi ba chi ba pel, de namba ye yore, nyembo, mentembe tsudo, nyembo namba tangji yonsu hi ne, ta ngarange megewa kare chegido, te tanda chegido ga, te pangu gudo ga, sonne pang. Ta megewa ngarange tanda chegi mendu, te yapondo, te zani ingo tsok nyenge mendu sambada. Tene gewa drupne, gewa ngarange kande chegido ta, Gewanda dugunduga sona te yang drup. Tene gewanda dugundu na drupati kone konda pel ni ma hiu kier tang. Tene gewate dugumandu na te ngo tsuk ni ngarang drup. Ta tende se de zendu tsamba tela. Yong taba pong ya sunge yore. Te ra pong chir zendu na namba yeda rabdun jong se.
Following that comes the medium path of accumulations, and during that we practice the four correct abandonments. So the four correct abandonments, should understand that as meaning diligence, four different types of diligence. Well, what are these four different types of diligence? Well, when one knows completely in every aspect the impediments and the antidotes, and so you've got the impediments. The impediments mean non-virtue, misdeeds. So if there's some non-virtue that you do, then give that up. And then if there is some non-virtue that you don't do, then don't let that happen. So prevent those that are not arising from arising and eliminate those that have arisen. Then there are virtuous things. So there are virtuous things that we are accomplishing, and those virtuous things that we aren't accomplishing. And if there are virtuous things that we are not accomplishing yet, then we need to do them. We need to accomplish them. And if they are virtuous things that we are doing, then we need to increase them. So these are the antidotes. And so those that we're already doing, we need to increase. We need to think, this is the antidote, I need to do it, and we need to increase it. Or if there's something that we haven't yet done, we need to start doing it. So these are the impediments and the antidotes. And so when we think about it, we should think, okay, what non-virtuous things do I do? And then think, I've got to stop doing that. You have to eliminate or abandon that non-virtuous things. Think to yourself, I can't let myself do that again. And if there is some unvirtuous thing that you're not doing, then stay not doing it. Just don't let that happen. And then there are the virtuous things. In terms of virtue, you think about, is this a virtue that I'm doing? If you're doing it, then you've got to increase it, and that means to make it stronger and better. If you're not doing it, then you've got to try to start doing it and to take it up. And so these are the four types of the four correct abandonments, which are four types of diligence to abandon them occur.
Tene ta te jeso tsunam chimbore. Ta tanda te tsunam renke kaso yung topa pongwa ye. Tsunam chimbu kaso zunchu chi kongpa ye sunga yore. Tseke wanda sena zunchu rabo toya gandar tila koga yore. Zunchu sena tampi chuga yenten. Yenten ke tsawan rabo je impi sena zunchu chi kangba sunga yore. Tampi chuga yenten ke tsawa te tingen zenle. Tingen zen te yapo yunga ke cheto la ta ti gonggu ge yore la. Tila kande gonggu ge yore sena. Ter ne tingen zen te la ne les ruwa nye. Ten sem te les ruwa yapo che rina. Ten nang tam jin jorwan jor tene te lega kanga ndugre. Te kana tene zuntru je komba te togre sena. Nipa nga je yore. Ti pangu ge yore. Ti nipa nga te pangsi te la nduji je yore. Te tembe jole chungwa yin, ta hu ni temba la nipa nga te pang, te pangsi te la pang nduzi ji ten yuwaare. Ta nipa nga te kandere se na, tene lelo tong na, dangwa na ji tong sen tong gepa tong ndumi si tong nduzi te la nipa nga nde to. Ta tingen zen gong beka so la tongpo tingen zen gong mumu pe lelo. Ta lelo yuwa na tingen zen gong tuki yuwa lelo te nipa re, te pang kuki yuwaare, jai che. Tene nipa te dangwa jepare, ta te dangwa tenzo trene, tene yapo sine gongu yuwaare la. Ti dangwa tenzo pa jengi jo ondo kyorso na, tene medren, tene te tingenze gongu yuwaare. Tene nipa te dangwa jepare. Nipa sumba te ta singwa tang gyapare la. Sumba te singwa tang gyapa, singwa si tu kapka la sen mesalwan te. Kaukala nonto mambo tiene teni tate la gapa singe ni di nyom de tsini sumbare tate pa ni pa nga ga no sumbare ni pa nga ga no ne yiba de ndo meji pa sin ta singe rabo chong teni chen rabo chong lelo rabo chong dangwa je pa tin zu chong na teni tel nyembo ndo meji pa ta ti nyembo de ta hi jine ta nga nden jung ndo shi gu ndo somben nyembo ndo meji pa te ta ni pa yiba nipa nga ba de tene ya yapo chong de pe kala te taga si le de ga gur ma to nyembo ndo se pa tene ndo si che na ya pa tor ndo yo la ndo nipa nga de to se ta tingen zen peru ki che la pangja khare pangu yo re se na ta nipa nga de pangu yo re.
So that was the medium path of accumulation, where we meditate on the four complete abandonments. Then following that, there is the greater path of accumulation. And so in the greater path of accumulation, what we meditate upon are called the 4 feet of miracles. Feet with 2 E's, I think, instead of an A. So the 4 feet of miracles. Now, when we listen to this name, we think miracles and magic and all sorts of stuff, but actually that's not what we really mean. The real miracle are the qualities that come from the Dharma, and the root of all of this is our samadhi practice. And so this is the feet, or the foot, or the basis of miracles, the qualities of the Dharma. So that's what this really means. And so we need to meditate upon these. And how is it that we meditate upon them? Well, resting there and being pliable. So we rest there, and when we rest in meditation, then our minds become pliable or workable. It's sometimes also translated as, or thoroughly trained. But our minds become pliable. And then when we meditate in this way, then we will be able to accomplish all purposes. Anything that we want to do, we will be able to do. Well, how is it that we can do this? It's by eliminating the 5 faults. Comes from the cause of relying on the 8 factors. So there are 5 faults that we need to eliminate. And the way that we need, the antidotes for these are the 8 different factors that are all taught below. So we've got the 8 factors and we've got the 5 faults. So what are these 5 faults? Well, the 5 faults are taught in verse number 4, which reads, laziness, forgetting instructions, torpor and agitation, effort and lack of effort are held to be the 5 faults. And so when we are practicing meditation, if we are just lazy and just don't feel like meditating, then we're not going to be able to meditate. It is that's a fault of meditation. So that laziness needs to be eliminated. So that's the first one, the fault of laziness. The second is forgetting instructions. You take instructions from a master, and then when you're sitting there meditating, you forget them. That is a fault in meditation as well. You need to remember the instructions, but instead of remembering them, you forget them. That is the fault for our samadhi. And so that is the second fault. The third fault is torpor and agitation. So torpor and agitation, sometimes our minds get really unclear. That's torpor. Or sometimes there are a lot of different thoughts, and that's agitation. So these are torpor and agitation. And here, these two are counted together as the third fault. The fourth fault is effort. So basically, effort means that let's see. Actually, I got this. The order is wrong in the English translation. I'm sorry. It should be lack of effort and effort, not effort and lack of effort. So the lack of effort is the fourth fault. And the lack of effort means that when there is a problem that occurs in your samadhi, such as torpor and agitation, or such as forgetting the instructions, or such as laziness, when that sort of a fault occurs, then if you don't apply the antidote, that is the lack of effort. If you sort of think, I don't need to do anything and just rest here, that is a fault. So that is the lack of effort. That's the fourth fault. And then the fifth fault is effort. So effort means that when your meditation is going well, then you don't need to do anything. You just need to rest there. If, on the other hand, you keep on putting effort into it and trying to apply the antidotes over and over again, then you're just going to lose your meditation. So that extraneous effort is another fault. So these are the 5 faults that we need to eliminate in order to develop true samadhi.
다 대답이 니빵아데 빵국이요. 대 빵백에 탑 칸데 그거래세나. 되네 빵운두지 지데 땡국이요. 빵운두지 지데 땡베체도 네당 대라 네바동 조동 제부니도 미빠 제퍼 마저동 사인동 게동 또바동 대뽕 음바른두지 동 히세 날든 주바고 숨드텔라. 다 디게 빵운두지 지다 쪼르보테 레로 빵국이요. 레로 빵을 짜와티 간디시는 빵 두개 요아르신 ndamba 효침보지요나 ndamba 다 띵엔진 강국도 신의 무바단 ndamba 효침보지요나 띠띵엔진 네엔다보지레 예 다티 야포 용야가 네데 데레 네당세 데네 다티 ndamba 텔라 네당생기 당보 ndamba 다 된다 맞뽕은지 지 당보지요나 대바당 제이 넘바당 니 졸바동 솜 신종동 예 덴바당 아 Yin Dong Zhou, Semba Dong Dang, Dong Yang Dong Ji La, Tati Ji Ganani, Tangbo Ndambati, the Dingen Zenji, near Tabajirella, Tati Ndambati Huchimboji Gugio, Tati Lelo Ponzi, Niembotella, Lelo Ponzi, Niembotella, Tangbo Ndamba Huchimbojona, Lelo di Jungmarella, Ndambati on Menat, Lelo Jungio, Ndambati True sinking, Tela Nepa, Sinding. Tela nepa te kandire sena zolware tati ndamba te hiu chenpo jiwana tel zendru di yungi yore teni te lelu nyembo te zendru ngomare zendru re la teni zendru te kana nege yore sena ndamba la nege yore ta te yendo te jo te ndamba te nyungzi ki jo te kandire sena tepa hiu chenpo jiwana jo tang singin te tepa gogi yore Tene tati tepa hiu chimboji yona, tepa hiu chimboji yona, ndamba hiu chimboji yona, zendruji drebu nito, drebu ti hinjong, tene samti les ruan, rabu yabu yungi yore. Tati tepa tang chay, ndamba tang ni, zolwa tong som, hinjong to yede lelu nyembore. Tata kong nipa nga yebe nune, lelu ki nyembola ti yede enrobi yore. 다 대견도 되네 다 단다 미빠제바데 다 단다 공도 단다 간디땡 요아르세나 동화 제바데 다짱 니빠데 동화 제바래라 동화 제비님 볼라 가리고 그래서나 템바데 되네 템바데 되네 동화 제기미요 말에 양시 땡고기요 아래 Tene tati dangwa te maji pasene tene tati ke kande yungre sena hijin yungre la hijin to tangarang kande chegido kande tengido gam kande jagdo tadu tela tati kare penge yore sena siwa tong gyapatel penge yore siwa tong gyapate pompe ke tabla kare guge yore sena hijin de guge yore hijin de ki tsawate kana tenge re sena trepa mipa jepa majur pe tremba te yung guge yore 다티게 신화당 겨빠 짠 당부게 레루기 님볼라 솜예 데네 당와 제비 님볼라 데네 템바 싱게기 님볼라 희힌 데네 다 대뽕 응버도 세바티 다 싱게 인정 대백갑라 데네 님보 땡구비기 준신데 간데지레스나 셈바데 리파 드럼네 다티 대뽕 응버도 세바티 셈바레 Tene tati ngambarndo sepi nyembola semba gugiyo. Ta hisi naldun juba gosi tene ngambarndo mizipa. Tati ngambarndo si chena kina ta hiwi chena naldun juba tongnyam te tati pondu zi jila tene tingen zenje. Kante pang tuba tang yentente per tuba yungiyo re sonre. Tene tanda nipa ngata pondu ji tenzo tula ngina pe gom japaka la pe pento chembo
So we have these 5 faults that we need to eliminate, but what's the method to do that? Well, the method to eliminate the 5 faults is the 8 factors. And the 8 factors are taught in starting in verse 5. As basis, what is based on it, the cause and the result. The focus will not be forgotten. Torpor and aspiration perceived. What eliminates it is manifested. And when calmed, one rests naturally. And so here this is teaching the 8 different factors. And the main one, the main fault that we need to eliminate is actually laziness. This is the main thing we need to do. And what is the root, the basis for this? It's just not wanting to do it. It's like, oh, I don't feel like meditating today. I can't do it. That lacking that sort of interest. And so the basis here, it says, as a basis, it says we need, what that means is we need to have interest. And so we have to have that interest, and that is the basis. And so generally, actually, we have the 8 different factors. And to go through the 8 different factors in order, they are faith. Number 2 is interest. The 3rd is effort. The 4th is pliability or workability. And the 5th is mindfulness. The 6th is awareness. The 7th is volition. And the 8th is equanimity. So faith, intention, effort, faith, intention, effort. Or what did I say? Did I? Intention, yeah. Faith, intention, effort, pliability, mindfulness, awareness, volition, and equanimity. I'll go over them again this afternoon. So these are the 8 factors. And so as basis, what is the basis of it? The one that is basic is having the intention, the thinking, I need to do this. I want to meditate upon this. So this is what we need. And if we have this, then we will not be lazy about it. So with this intention, then we will not be, or interest, excuse me, with this interest, then we will not be lazy. And so what comes out of this, what is based upon this, is its companion, which is effort. And effort here means diligence. Actually, diligence is the real antidote for laziness. And so that diligence is based upon our interest. And so this is we have the, and then there's the, and then that interest, that also has a cause. And the cause of the interest is faith. So faith, if we have really strong faith, and we'll want to do it, we'll have the interest in meditating. And so in this way, if we have faith, we will develop the interest. If we have that interest, then we will be diligent. And then if we are diligent, the result of that is that our minds will be pliable and workable. We'll be able to do things with our minds. And so in this way, we have these 4 antidotes: faith, interest, diligence, and pliability, which are the antidotes for laziness. And so these are all antidotes for the first of the 5 faults, which is laziness. Then the second of the 5 faults is forgetting the focus, or forgetting the instructions. And so here, the remedy for this is mindfulness, not forgetting the focus. Or mindfulness means remembering over and over again, oh, this is the instruction, I need to do this. So again and again, we recall the instruction. So that is mindfulness. And then what comes out of that mindfulness is awareness. Awareness is knowing, okay, this is what's happening in my meditation. This is what's going on in my mind. It's basically knowing while something is happening, what's going on. So that is awareness. And this is the antidote for torpor and agitation, because we are aware of that torpor or the agitation happening. So the torpor and aspiration will be perceived. So in this way, we have the 4 foundations, or the 4 factors that are the antidotes for laziness. We have the mindfulness, which is the antidote for forgetting the instructions, and we have the awareness, which is the antidote for the torpor and agitation. Then following that, we have volition. And so volition is what eliminates it is manifested. So when a fault occurs in our meditation, then because of all this, we have the volition and the intention, the wish to apply the antidote. And so that is the effort that goes in to actually apply the antidote. And so that is the factor of volition. And then when calmed, one rests naturally. So the last of the 5 faults is that when the antidotes, when we have a fault, when we are still resting when we can rest naturally in meditation, we keep applying the antidote over and over again. But this means that we can just rest in equanimity, the last of the 8 factors, equanimity. We rest in that naturally within that. And so in this way, we have these 8 factors that can eliminate the 5 faults of meditation. They eliminate the faults, and they can help us develop all the qualities. And so, in this way, we have the five faults and the 8 factors that we need to know. And so, it's actually really important to know these. It's very important to keep these 5 faults and the 8 factors in your mind, and keep them in mind so that you can use them when you're meditation.
Solon chungun rainda chimbusong nekapte hubarella. Tati jis jolam. Tene jolam koma rela tene tantanga duchuntin tesam yona.
So those are the 3 phases of the path of accumulation. You've got the lesser, the medium, and the greater paths of accumulation. Following that come the different parts of the path of joining, the lower and the upper parts of the path of joining, but maybe that's enough for this morning.